Okay, so today we're going to talk about your blood. So what makes up your blood, what are the components, and how do we tell blood types apart? Because as you probably know, blood types are very different. So your blood basically has four components, and the first is plasma. And plasma makes up the majority of your blood. So plasma is the liquid part of blood. It's 90% water and 10% dissolved materials. So plasma carries nutrients, chemical messengers, and it also takes away waste products. The part of blood that you're probably most familiar with is your red blood cells. So the red blood cells take up oxygen and deliver it to other cells. And as we learned when we talked about the skeletal system, they're produced in the bone marrow. And they have a chemical called hemoglobin, which is a protein that contains iron, which binds the oxygen to the red blood cell. Then the second one you're probably most familiar with is white blood cells. So white blood cells fight your body's disease. And some actually recognize bacteria and other invaders, which are called pathogens, which we'll learn later when we talk about the immune system. And some surround and kill the organism. The last component of blood is platelets. And platelets are basically cell fragments, they're dead cells, that help form blood clots. And they stop you from bleeding. So what happens is, when your vein or your blood vessel gets damaged, the platelets will clump up and they'll fill in the damaged spot, and they'll stop it from the red blood cells and the blood from leaking out of that damaged cell. So the last thing I want to talk about, and what we're going to do in the lab tomorrow, is blood types. So red blood cells have marker molecules attached to them, and that gives you your blood types. So there are four basic blood types. We have A, which has the A marker protein, B, which has the B marker protein, AB, which has both, and O, which has neither. And blood can also have a protein called Rh, which makes you either positive or negative, so you either have it or you don't. So an example blood type would be AB positive or AB negative or B positive, so on and so forth. So what does this mean? It means that people who would need a blood transfusion, like if they're very sick, must get the correct blood type. So you have these things called clumping proteins, which recognize the foreign markers on your blood cells. So for example, A-type blood has clumping proteins for the B marker, so all B marker cells will clump together. So what that means is you're basically going to form a blood clot. So if we look down here, you can see it's my blood type B, and here's my B marker, and they have the anti-A antibody. So these are those clumping proteins we talked about. And then they have the B antigen, and so compatible blood types are B or O. O is typically the universal donor because it has neither of them, and it has both anti-A and anti-B proteins. So O can donate to anybody. AB can receive blood from anybody because it doesn't have any of the clumping proteins. And that's basically all that means, and we'll go into that in more detail tomorrow when you do the lab. And that's all I have today.